Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's Laces Out. That's right, it's our NFL podcast, and we've got a guest. That's right, it's another week and another guest. More games to look forward to, more games to review, more predictions, more stats, more news, more everything NFL based. Before we get started, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. Share the podcast around, people. That's what we want right now. Share the podcast around. Right, let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast. Laces Out.
Recording in progress.
She's not wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on in. As you can see, there are three lovely faces in front of you. No, I know what you're thinking. It's not the football podcast for once. Although it is a football podcast of sorts. It is, of course, the American football podcast this week. Obviously joining myself and your always lovely co-host and podcast Don, as it were, Mr. Andrew Cook. This week's guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Stuart Woodmansey, a familiar face from the football podcast, the wrestling podcast, various assortments of BS casts from the past. How are you, sir? First appearance on the NFL show this year.
Yeah, I'll be probably doing a little better if my team were doing a little better, but we'll get to that, I'm sure.
I'm sure we exclusively agreed that this year we just weren't going to discuss fantasy. So
no, I meant my actual NFL team.
I see.
For those of us who don't have a commitment problem, Paul.
Well, it's hard to support behind a team who trades away their morals for a quarterback. But that's neither here nor there. So, obviously, Mr. Woodmansey's first appearance of the season, which means he gets to give us his season-long predictions, ladies and gentlemen. So, as we've done with Mr. Matthew Moore last week and myself and Mr. Cook in week one, we're asking for the teams you believe will make up the Super Bowl, so your AFC and NFC picks. Which of those teams you think will win, and which player you think will be voted as the game's MVP? So, who do you think will make the game from the AFC?
If I say anybody other than the Chiefs, that's probably bad. So I'm going for Chiefs from the AFC.
Okay, so that is the Kansas City Chiefs. So far, you are only the second person to predict the Chiefs. And your NFC selection, please.
It's going to be all red everything, 49ers.
You are the second person to select the San Francisco 49ers. You might be able to pick, or we might be able to guess who the other person to pick the San Francisco 49ers was. Because of the Landers tattoo, his Joey Bosa tattoo, his Christian McCaffrey tattoo, etc. So, Chiefs versus 49ers. Of those two, who do you believe would win the game?
I can almost hear a few friends in the distance crying out, going, "Don't give us the kiss of death." But I'm going to go 49ers.
Interesting. San Francisco. 49ers to get the win. And if that was the case, who do you believe would be the game's MVP?
I still think that they'll struggle a little bit quarterback-wise, so I can't really pick anybody other than McCaffrey if he stays fit, so go there.
Christian There you are, ladies and gentlemen. So, to go along with my Cincinnati Bengals versus Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles to win, Jalen Hurts to be the MVP. Mr. Andrew Cook's Chiefs versus Eagles. Kansas City Chiefs to win, Patrick Mahomes to be the MVP. And Matt Moore's Buffalo Bills versus the San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers and Joey Bosa to win. Mr. Woodmansey there has given us a Chiefs-Niners Super Bowl, so a repeat from 3 years ago. But a different outcome this time. The 49ers winning and Christian McCaffrey to be your MVP. That just leaves us with the season-long MVP selection. Have you got any ideas who you think might be the guy to get the nod there?
Yeah, I'm going to hedge my bets and swing for the other side and go with Mahomes for that one.
Sorry, I could have sworn I just heard you say that you're going to swing for the other side there. Interesting. It's an interesting way to make us all aware of your personal preferences and choices. But we're a supportive podcast, so we support you in all your decisions. So, your regular season MVP selections. I went with Joe Burrow. We'll come back to Andy. Matt Moore went for Josh Allen. And obviously, Stu just then has picked Patrick Mahomes. I think Andy's got the biggest shot of anyone with his Aaron Rodgers pick.
I would suggest that you've got as much of a chance based on the fact that I have Burrow in my fantasy team, and he has been crap so far.
He got a win on Monday. That's all that matters. And speaking of getting a win on Monday, that takes us to Week 3's slate of games. So, as always, myself, Mr. Cook, and the guest provide selections for the week. Obviously, last week's guest was Mr. Matthew Moore, so he was in the guest slot. 16 selections, 16 points. There was a tie for second place. 2 people got 10 out of 16 picks correct. Unfortunately, they were both the host of the show. So, letting me down were the Baltimore Ravens against the Indianapolis Colts, the New Orleans Saints against the Green Bay Packers, the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Houston Texans, the Minnesota Vikings against the Los Angeles Chargers, the Dallas Cowboys against the Arizona Cardinals, and the Las Vegas Raiders against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Similar situation for Mr. Cook. You also had the Ravens, the Saints, the Jags, the Vikings, and the Cowboys. But his other team to let him down was the New York Jets against the New England Patriots. Which means, with his 11 out of 16 selections correct, Mr. Moore takes a point for the guest and increases the guest's lead for this season. So, me still to get off the mark. Andy with half a point, and the guest moves on to 2.5 points for the season.
2 things about those picks. Number 1, the Jets nearly did it. And number 2, if you asked me to pick those games again now, I'd still pick those choices. Yeah. When you've gone through all the games, I'm like, no, I'd still have picked those choices now because those are logical choices.
Well, I believe if you go back and listen to last week's show, I believe one of the phrases I said was that the Cowboys looked good, but they're only an implosion away from being the Dallas Cowboys that everyone knows. And lo and behold, they go and lose against a team that's arguably going to be in for the number 1 pick in about 6-7 months' time. That just leaves the stats to go through. But before we get to the stats, we have the side bet to discuss. So, for new customers, as it were, each week myself and Andy pick 4 surefire games that we feel are going to go a certain way. We have those as our nailed-on bank picks. Once that team has been picked, the game that involves them is removed from selection. So we pick 4 each week. We tally them up over the course of the season. And when it comes to the Super Bowl, the person who has the most selections correct is the winner. So this week, and just going into week 3, the standings were I was on 7 out of 8 points, Andy was on 4 out of 8 points. How will that be affected when we go to week 3? So Andy had a clean sweep this week, ladies and gentlemen. He had the Kansas City Chiefs to beat the Chicago Bears, the San Francisco 49ers to beat the New York Giants, the Buffalo Bills to beat the Washington Commanders, and the Detroit Lions to beat the Atlanta Falcons. So, Andy moves on 8 points from a possible 12. I didn't have such a good selection, as I had the Seattle Seahawks to beat the Carolina Panthers, and then it went a bit awry, as I had the Ravens to beat the Colts, the Jaguars to beat the Texans, and the Cowboys to beat the Cardinals. Oh dear. So from a 3-point lead, in one fell swoop in 1 week, that lead has been completely and utterly wiped out. Both of us on 8 from 12 selections. Well done, Mr. Cook, for bringing it back so quickly.
Thank you very much. Obviously, at this point, I will just highlight how I spent the entirety of last season going, this is why you love the side bet. It can literally flip like that in a week. Now, some people would have looked at last week and gone, that's it now, he's never going to catch up. And now it's neck and neck.
There's neck and neck level pegging. No. I understand we've got some stats that may or may not have been provided by the stats mistress.
Yes, there's 2 things about the stats. One, I just looked at how many there were and divided them up as equally as possible, which, as Paul has pointed out, has left it where one of my stats is also running into one of his, so there's a bit of a discombobulation there. And I must apologise to Stu, because as I was sorted his out, I went, oh, it's War and Peace. So I hope you've got your reading glasses on, Stu, because you're going to be there a while. Outside of that, yes, big shout out to the Stats Mistress. Big shout out to Nate Davis of USA Today. We do get the credit this week. These are week 3 NFL stats for the 2023 season, and what a way to kick off the stats. You didn't think we weren't going anywhere other than the Finns 70 burger. Seriously, what an obviously impressive performance, as Miami became the 4th NFL team to reach the 70-point plateau in the Dolphins' 70-20 dismantling of the Broncos. The most points scored by a team since Washington had 72 in 1966. Number 2, the Dolphins, 726 total yards, are a record for one team in the Super Bowl era since 1966. They averaged 10.2 more than a first down per snap. Miami had 4 players exceeding 50 yards and 4 others that went for at least 20. No real surprises that their third stat of the week is about Dolphins running back Raheem Mostert and rookie Devon Achane had 4 touchdowns apiece, the second pair of teammates to achieve that in a game. Achane also rushed for 203 yards on 18 carries. Apparently, elsewhere, there were other games going on. In a game that was entertaining for different reasons, the Los Angeles Chargers and Vikings both piled up 475 yards. though it was the Bolts who outlasted head coach Brandon Staley's decision making and the Vikes for 28-24 triumph in what was effectively an elimination game between clubs that started Sunday 0-2. As I mentioned before, my last stat runs into Paul's first stat, so Paul, keep that ball going.
Yes, indeed. So, Staley's team secured the victory thanks to linebacker Kenneth Murray's end zone interception with 7 seconds remaining, absolving the coach of his failed decision to go for it on 4th and 1 from his team's own 24-yard line. Baffling. On a day when his team rushed for all of 30 yards without injured running back Austin Eckler in a bid to end the game. Watching that, just baffling. Truly, truly baffling. Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen caught 18 passes for 215 yards and threw a 49-yard touchdown pass to Mike Williams. Allen's 18 catches were the most ever by a player who also threw for a touchdown, surpassing the previous standard by 6 grabs. I don't know if it's covered in Stu stats, but obviously that's the last action that Mike Williams will play this season, as I believe he tore his ACL.
Yeah, it's looking that way.
It's not ideal. Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson finished with 7 grabs for 149 yards and a touchdown. He finished 1 yard shy of becoming the first player to ever start a season with 3 consecutive 150-yard receiving games. But his 458 total yards tied Wes Welker's mark for the most ever through 3 weeks. Staying with Minnesota, they are 0-3, despite not losing any of its games by more than 6 points. The defending NFC North champions were 11-0 in one-score games in 2022. A similar field, the Vikings have lost 7 fumbles this season. 7 in 3 games. That's pretty bad. And my last stat is quite a short one, but quite a damning one for one of the teams involved. The New England Patriots have now beaten the reeling New York Jets 15 consecutive occasions. 1-5. 15. That's pretty damning. Over to you, Mr. Woodmansey, to finish us off, as it were.
Okay, so we head to the Buffalo Bills defence. Served reminder that this isn't just the Josh Allen show. Even with linebacker Von Miller with his knee injury at least weeks away from returning, Buffalo hung 9 sacks, 5 takeaways and 1 pick six on the previously unbeaten Washington Commanders, who managed all of 230 yards in a 37-3 rout. In a game marred by the remnants of Tropical Storm Ophelia, the Indianapolis Colts returned to their birthplace and beat the Baltimore Ravens 22-19 in overtime. Upstaging legendary kicker Justin Tucker, who was short on what would have been a game-winning 61-yard field goal at the end of regulation. Yes, I am well aware, thank you very much, Fancy Points. The Colts' Matt Gay became the first man in the league annals to hit 4 field goals from 50-plus yards in a single game, including the game winner from 53 with just 69 seconds left. We're not saying Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson takes our on-field advice, but maybe. Despite the loss of Pro Bowl running back Nick Chubb to season-ending knee surgery, Watson responded with his best performance as a Brown, connecting on 27 of 33 throws for 289 yards and 2 scores. He distributed the ball nicely in Cleveland's 27-3 runaway against the Tennessee Titans, hooking up at least twice with a half dozen receivers. Watson's 123.4 passer rating was his best with Cleveland, and only the second time in 9 starts with the Browns that he's topped the 100 mark. He had a 104.5 career mark during his time in Houston. Browns defensive end Myles Garrett had 3.5 sacks, 1 shy of his personal best in the NFL. And finally, Green Bay Packers outside linebacker Rashawn Gary had a career-high 3 sacks, one injuring the throwing shoulder of Saints quarterback Derek Carr in the Pack's 18-17 defeat of New Orleans. New QB1 Jordan Love rallied the Packers out of what became a 17-0 fourth quarter hole in his first career start at Lambeau Field. And that's your lot.
You know, I think it's weird to make it to week 3 before playing a home game.
Well, yeah, but it seems to happen more than you think. It's odd. Like I don't know if there must be reasons as to why they do like back-to-back road games to start the season. Because it was the 49ers had it, the Packers had it, and there was maybe one other team that had 2 road games to start the season.
But it's not even like they stop halfway between 2 points to train for that week, because they fully go back to base, don't they, and then go back out again.
Well, sometimes I think it depends. It depends which way they sort of work the schedule, because sometimes they will just set up like a camp. Like either, say, if it's the Niners playing the Giants, for example, they wouldn't just, because that's literally coast to coast. So they'd probably base themselves out of, like, say, I don't know, like Baltimore or something like that for the week or something like that. And then they'll maybe sort of, depending on where the second game is the week after, they'll maybe sort of like stop somewhere in there and just stay at a hotel. But it depends really, because obviously, yeah, if they sort of like trying to sort of keep the carbon footprint down and stuff like that, I don't know, they might be less likely just to sort of like fly back and forth and stuff like that. But I'm sure that's not on the minds of certain NFL franchises, shall we say. That's week 3, done and dusted, in the books. We need to forget about it, never discuss it ever again, especially from a side bet perspective. It didn't happen, it never existed. That leaves us with week 4. Mr. Cook and Mr. Woodmansey have provided me with their selections for week 4's games. So we'll go through these now, and then we'll pick up. We'll have a little talk about some of the games that look a little tastier than most, shall we say? And then myself and Andy will go through the side bet picks, and we'll see how we get on. The week opens with an NFC North rivalry for the ages, shall we say? Thursday Night Football takes us to Green Bay, where the Lions take on the Packers. This is a repeat of the last game of the regular season from last season, where had the Seahawks not beaten whoever it was they played, it would have been a win and in-game for both the Lions and the Packers. Sadly, that is not the case this season, obviously, as we're only at week 4. However, we are all in agreement that we think the Lions will get the win here. Even though it's in the Packers' hometown and the home stadium, we're all big-time Detroit fans, it would seem.
I mean, I don't even know what to say. The Packers had a win. I think the way the Packers look at the moment, that's a little more surprising than it maybe would have been in seasons gone by. The Lions seem to be dialed in. I know that they looked reasonable last season. They look better this season. Jared Goff's numbers seem to be fairly steady. He seems to be getting it done where it needs to be done. They're looking good. Some teams you just want to see them succeed. It's nice to see the Lions actually, winning games, coming away from it as being the better team of the week and things like that. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me we've all gone with a Lions win. If you look at those two teams on paper, makes sense.
Next up, we have our first UK game of this particular season's slate, where we have the Atlanta Falcons travelling to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. This will be the first of the 2:30 slate of games on Sunday. Myself and Andy have picked the Jags to bounce back with a win, whereas Mr. Woodmansey has picked the Falcons to get the win on this one. Next up, early argument for game of the week, dare I say, where the Miami Dolphins fresh off that 70 burger, as was so eloquently put, take on their divisional rival Buffalo Bills. And somewhat surprisingly, even though the Dolphins have just hung that 70 points on the Denver Broncos, we've all gone for a Bills win. Now, is that just because it's the Bills at home? Or is it just because we think the Bills are a better team than the Finns?
I think they run the risk of having the hangover from last week. They've got a lot. Like, yeah, great, you scored 70 points, but the proof will be, can you keep that kind of form going? I dare say that they're going to come up against a much tougher opposition this coming weekend. So I think that'll be the bigger test.
You're not putting 70 points on the Bills. It's physically impossible in a week where Dolphins score 70 points. Let's go back and look at how many fantasy points the Buffalo Bills defense scored. You know, you're going up against a much more competitive opponent in the Bills. I personally don't think there's any doubt that we'll be seeing the Bills come playoff time. Will we be saying the same for the Dolphins? You know, like you were saying about the Cowboys are one step away from some sort of implosion, and that's going to affect, like every season for the Dallas Cowboys, there's just one step away from something going wrong. The Dolphins also have that possibility of something going wrong and just derailing the season. So going up against the Bills, I did do a bit of a double take. I was a bit like, it's the Bills.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you. Couldn't agree with what said there. Next up, we've got the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Carolina Panthers. We've all gone for the Vikings on that one. The Broncos taking on the Bears in the first dross-off of the season. Myself and Andy have gone for the Broncos. Stu's given home field advantage to the Bears. I had a conversation with a Broncos fan this weekend where I said, honestly, the team that doesn't win that one could be looking at an 0-16 season, because they both look absolutely dreadful.
So that Paul giving it a tie after regulation.
No, seriously, there was a game last week where I think I wanted to pick a tie. I think I wanted to pick Chargers Vikings as a tie, but talk myself out of it. Next up, we've got the grudge match of the Ravens taking on the Cleveland Browns. I'm on my own in backing the Browns to get the win at home, whereas Andy and Stu have taken the Ravens. We're all taking the Steelers at Houston to beat the Texans. Myself and Andy have got the Rams beating the Colts, whereas Stu's gone the other way. He's given the home team the advantage there to be backing the Colts. The Bucks are travelling to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Myself and Andy think the Saints will get the win. Stu's gone for the Bucks. Commanders Eagles, it's a clean sweep for the Eagles. Same again for the Bengals taking on Tennessee. And same again for the Chargers at home to the Las Vegas Raiders, which I thought might have thrown up a couple of potential banana skins there. But no, we're all thinking the Chargers will get the win there. Next up, it's the New England Patriots travelling to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. We all feel the Cowboys are going to bounce back. Probably blowout of the weekend. We'll see the 49ers hang probably about 50 points on the Cardinals, no doubt. And we're all in on the 49ers to get them in there. The Sunday night game sees the Kansas City Chiefs travel to New York to take on the Jets. This was probably put on the slate before Mr. Rogers went down for the season with his Achilles injury. I think we're all very sensibly taking the Chiefs to get a comfortable win there.
Can the Jets save themselves the petrol and just default to we're not turning up for that one, we can't face it?
Well, it's in New York, so that's the only thing that's going for them, I suppose. And for the second time this season, we've got a back-to-back Sunday night and Monday night taking place in New York, whereas MacLeod Stadium has back-to-back games as the Seahawks travel to New York to take on the Giants. myself and Stu have given the nod to the Giants, whereas Andy, with his homer pick, has obviously gone for the Seattle Seahawks to get the win there. That's the Week 4 game picks from us as a group. That just leaves us with the side bet. However, I feel that myself and Mr. Cook need to step back, take a look through these, decide which are the creme de la creme picks, and then bring them to you. So don't you guys go anywhere, but we're going to step away for a moment to compose ourselves, and we'll be right back.
Recording in progress.
And just like that, we're back. So, the Game 4 picks are in the bank for this week for myself, Mr. Woodmansey, and Mr. Cook. So, side bet time. As Mr. Cook has just pointed out, off air, technically it's me to pick first this week, as I was unsuccessful last week in my 1 of 4 selections, whereas he was nothing but successful with his 4 from 4 picks. So, where should I go? I think there's only one logical place to start, and it is, of course, taking San Francisco 49ers to beat the Arizona Cardinals. Yes. I will very much like that. Please, thank you. Mr. Cook, your 2 selections, please.
When you said there was only one obvious place to go, I surely thought, well, he's absolutely taking the Kansas City Chiefs to beat the New York Jets off the board. And then you didn't. So, yes, please.
Kansas City Chiefs, your second selection.
The Philadelphia Eagles to beat the Washington Commanders.
Interesting. In that case, I will take the Pittsburgh Steelers
Ooh.
to beat the Houston Texans. And where do I want to go for my third selection? There's a couple of sort of like 50-50 games this week. I'll go with, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm going to take the Vikings.
I honestly thought that I was going to get that game for free because I was like, there's no way Paul's going to say the words, the Vikings to win.
Well, let's have a look. Have I done it yet this season?
I can't imagine you've ever done it.
I have done. I did it in week 1 and they let me down. I've opened myself up. I've opened my heart, and they've cruelly, they've basically shut in my eye. And I've opened it up again. I'm gonna let them hurt me again, and I don't like it. I don't like it one little bit. Your remaining 2 selections, please, Mr. Cook.
If you're saying things like the Vikings to win, then surely I have to say the Dallas Cowboys to beat the New England Patriots.
It's not where I'd have gone.
Me neither. Wait, what? Is it my final pick?
It is indeed your final selection.
Then the Cincinnati Bengals
Gosh darn it.
to beat the Tennessee Titans. Now, some people might think I did that on purpose, but I'm not that kind of person. I wouldn't wait till the last pick to swoop in and take that game off the board. I'm not that kind of guy.
I saw it just sitting there, just begging someone to take it, and it didn't happen until just now. So I've somehow got to take a winner out of some of. I mean, who in their right mind is touching the Broncos-Bears game in this particular scenario?
I was just looking at it going, come on. It's obvious. It's the Broncos-Bear game.
I mean, I'm looking for the games where we've had like clean sweeps across the board. Part of me's tempted to take the Chargers at home to the Raiders.
So I nearly said, I'm going to make Stu very happy here and take the Chargers game. It's weird when you're dealing with a 1-2 team versus a 1-2 team. I can tell you this much, if you're not into the pick'ems. Pick'ems gives you a percentage of what other people have thought. That game, I won't tell you which way round, because I won't want to influence you in any way. I will just say this. One of those teams has a 91%.
Well, that is quite something. I think I'm going to go potentially risky, and I'm going to pick the Jags. I'm going to pick the Jacksonville Jaguars at home to the Atlanta Falcons.
Now, I will say this to you. Pick'ems has got that game down as a 74% picked for the Jags versus obviously 26%. I looked at that game and was like, I wouldn't want that to be the selection that was put in front of me.
The only reason I'm in my head that I'm picking the Jags is you'd like to think they're going to be pissed off coming off the back of a loss to the Texans. And I know it's Wembley, so therefore it's mainly going to be all 32 teams that are sort of there supported and whatnot. But it is almost starting to get to a point where the Wembley games do tend to sort of feel a bit more supported by the home team. We are starting to get there.
So obviously I saw the Jags last year at Wembley. They didn't win that game, but I personally feel they should have done. They looked great. They went up several points in my estimation from seeing them live. I was like, they are a genuinely good team that just end up in bad situations. Like, they dominated that game for 3 quarters, and then Russ did what Russ does. No?
So, that is the week 4 side bet selections made. So, to recap, Mr. Cook has the Kansas City Chiefs at the New York Jets, the Philadelphia Eagles at home to the Washington Commanders, the Dallas Cowboys at home to the New England Patriots, and the Cincinnati Bengals at the Tennessee Titans, whereas I have the 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers, at home to the Arizona Cardinals, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Houston Texans, the Minnesota Vikings at the Carolina Panthers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars at home to the Atlanta Falcons. If you were having to put money, Mr. Woodmansey, on one of those two sets of selections, which would you feel more comfortable would be the most likely to give you a return of your investment, so to speak?
Without any hesitation, Andy.
Okay.
Purely, it's nothing to do with the fact that he said that he almost picked the Chargers. That is not true. It's more to do with the fact that you picked the Steelers, and I would not trust them with like transporting a cake. Never mind having to play a full two football games. And no,
I mean, you say that like a cake isn't a valuable bit of kit to be transporting.
Well,
a cake
but
is
in America
very
they just chuck them at people's faces, don't they? So
yeah, but a cake is very delicate. I can understand it if you were saying something that's very difficult to break, like I don't know, a piece of sheet metal. You wouldn't trust them to transport something.
Just wishing that they'd live by the Steelers mantra there. Is that? Yeah, just no. Just Andy's, because I would not. Those two games that you've picked aren't as clear cut to me. They've both got elements of anything could fucking happen. So, yeah, Andy's got a supporter this week.
I can't wait till next week where Paul's like, so Andy, you didn't get a single one of those games right. I'm like, I stand by my choices.
it worked out in Andy's favour last week as Matt had said that he felt that Andy's selections were the more sensible or likely outcomes, and as it turned out, he was absolutely correct. Andy with the full vote of 4 out of 4. Will it work exactly the same this week and get Andy another 4 points, or is it my turn to get a full vote with my selections? Only time will tell, ladies and gentlemen. That is all I had to bring to the table. I don't know if either of you gentlemen has got any other business or extras to bring to the party.
Do we need to mention?
It would appear not.
Do we need to mention anything about any not currently playing quarterbacks who may or may not have reached out to the Jets recently?
Well, the latest one that I'd seen today was that apparently they're looking into the possibility of working out Trevor Siemian.
So I work on the principle that an NFL franchise would be like, oh, let's go look here, let's go look there, let's go and look at this. What's this guy doing? Is there a trade opportunity there? What about this guy? This guy's not playing at the moment. All of that. But when you hear Colin Kaepernick has reached out to the New York Jets, you're like, for? Why is he reaching out to them? Surely they've got a Rolodex, a list. They're looking at it going, obviously top number 1, Cam Newton, number 2, RG3, number 3. And they're going through that list. Presumably somewhere on that list is...
We don't know. He might have just been looking for a jersey or a season ticket or something. I don't know. It clearly wasn't him asking if he could go and play for them, because why on earth would they say yes to that?
Just imagine the phone call. Hi, is that the Jets? It's Kaepernick. Oh, sorry, wrong number. Put the phone down. That's it.
just nonsense. I think if he was ever going to get back in, he's about 3 seasons too late at this point. He needed to be back in way before this point in time. I know he's still young in the grand scheme of things, but he's been out of the game for 5 seasons at least.
Yeah,
probably longer than that.
And every season starts with somebody on the NFL Network saying, oh, apparently Colin Kaepernick practices every day as if he's, in the off-season, getting ready to play and all that sort of stuff. Is this the year that one of the teams takes a punt on him? And, they always roll that out at the beginning of every season, and then every season goes by without him stepping on a football field to play. And it's like, which year is the year where we stop running that story as the first part of the season? Surely they've been Tom, talk to us about this retirement. How set in stone is it? Is it a soft retirement?
Well, apparently his purchase of shares or an option in the Raiders hasn't gone through as first thought. So it doesn't muddy the waters from that perspective of him trying to be involved with any other team. Because obviously, if he was a minority owner of the Raiders, he would only be able to have a connection with the Raiders. So that sort of clears up that murkiness, so to speak. But who knows? I think I saw something on. I think it was on the NFL Network where it said they're running the risk. This is the Jets. Of if they continue to run with Zach Wilson as the starter, then the defense is just like, mate, we're doing the best we can to keep the scores down in this game. If you don't put something on the pitch, it's like, you know, at least somewhat plausible from an offensive perspective, we're just going to have to stop trying because it's killing us. Like, you know, there's no point in us putting all our like effort in for him to just like keep throwing interceptions and stuff like that. So I think it's potentially, whilst I can understand why Salah is, you know, wanting to show support for a guy who's been in the organisation and stuff like that. If the players don't want him as the quarterback because they can see that he's not good enough, at what point do you have to pull the ripcord and just say, "I'm really sorry, mate. I know we've said that, like, you know, you can have the starting job, but for the good of the team, we need to take you out of the firing line."
It's one of those things, isn't it? At the end of the day, nobody's under any illusion going in as an NFL player. Your job is on the line, week in, week out. Every position on that team is subject to change. You step on that field, you fight for your job. There's a reason that the best of the best. There's a reason that people play one season and are never seen again. There's a reason why that sport is built the way it is. Because they want the absolute best player on the field at all times. And if you're not that guy, you won't be there. It's as simple as that. So you can say, you know, oh, we're trying to work him out this, or we're trying to do this. If he's not the right guy for the job, if he's not the absolute best guy for the job, then how long is he going to have that job? The answer should be not long. We're going into week 4 now. Rodgers went out in week 1. We're already at a stage where we've probably been umming and ahhing over this too long. So I would say you've got this week. Something doesn't change, then something will change.
Couldn't agree more.
Other than that, no, I don't have anything else.
Well, in that case, all that's left for us to do is to thank Mr. Woodmansey for being this week's guest and for joining us to give us his season-long predictions and his week 4 predictions. Thank you, lovely people, for tuning in to watch said predictions. And just to say, join us again next week where we'll do it all over again, hopefully with another guest. But we won't know until then, and neither will you. So tune in next week and see what we've got to bring to you. But until then, it's thank you from me, thank you from these two, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
So there we go, what do you think to that? Another one done, another one gotten. Big thank you to Stu for stepping in and being our guest for the week. What do you think? Who's going to win the side bet? Who's going to win the predictions? The guest seems to be pulling away at the moment. Can me or Paul bring it back? Find out next week. Before you leave us, before you go, before you end the podcast, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. Check out the website, thecookiecast.com. There's social media links and an email button, and that way you can get in touch with us. Let us know who you think's going to win this week. Right, that's it for this one. Until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
You've just listened to another episode of Cookie Cast. Thanks for listening.